example, I'm going to change my parents' mind or my grandparents' mind or most of my family members' mind. And so I don't specifically try. It's not that we have an understanding. They know what I believe. I know what they believe. They know that I'm not going to shut up anymore and sit over in the corner while they talk religious nonsense. Although on occasion, I'll just ignore the conversation. But on occasion, I'll chime in because that's the way it works. I don't think I'll ever change any of their minds, but I could be wrong.
Right.
As a reminder, since it's been a little bit, after the show's over, we get together and go to dinner at Threadgill's, 301 West Riverside Drive. Any atheist or atheist-friendly person is welcome to come down and join us. If you don't make it through on the telephone today, or if you don't want to, you can email tv@atheist-community.org, and you can tell me what an unbelievably arrogant ass I am and how I shouldn't be using profanity.
I can't believe you dropped the F-bomb on that lady.
I know.
You dick.
I know. What was I thinking?
All right.
And actually, it's getting to the point where, well, never mind.
Did you see? There's a really great video that I found on YouTube with, oh gosh, now of course his name is going to escape me. Used to be comedy partner of the guy who plays House.
Oh, Stephen Fry.
Stephen Fry talking about swearing. It's a great little video.
It's absolutely brilliant, and I already favorited it, and I'll probably be posting it on Facebook now that you've reminded me. Yeah. And believe me, Stephen Fry knows every fucking thing there is to know about the proper use of profanity. If somebody flag this episode, just for the repeats. Jonathan in Columbia, how are you?
Hi, fine, thank you. I like cursing, by the way, so don't feel too bad.
Well, we do try to limit it, but it's become kind of a meta discussion today. So I'll ask that we make attempts to limit it so that the show's at least approachable by most people.
Well, I won't curse, so
what's up?
I just wanted to know if you guys, despite being atheists, I'm one myself, if you ever rely on things that are irrational just to feel okay or have comfort. And I'll tell you why I'm asking. I'm Jamaican. I was watching the Miss Universe pageant last week, and Jamaica was a favorite. We got to the final two, which was Jamaica and Mexico. And in the pageant world, they believe two things. If in the last two you're standing on the right, chances are you're going to win. And also, if you are called first into the top five, chances are you're going to lose. So I'm sitting there, my heart is pounding hard, heavy, and I'm looking at the Jamaicans on the right-hand side, so that's one. And they call the other contestant first, so that's two. And I felt my heart slow down, and it was very noticeable, and I really did feel better. By the end of the night, Jamaica lost, so clearly that wasn't, rational for me to think in the first place. But it did make me feel better. My heart rate did slow down. I did feel a bit better. So my question to you guys is there ever a time when those things happen to you? You know it's not rational, but it makes you feel better.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
And when I catch myself doing it, I try to stop.
Me too.
Yeah. The other thing is, what you're talking about may not necessarily be irrational.
Yeah.
It may be that we don't have evidence to support it, but it's possible that the positioning or the order of name calling actually represents some subconscious bias. And we already know, for example, guys in the magic world know that if you put down a handful of cards in a particular order, we can predict with a pretty high degree of certainty which one's going to get picked based on its position and its value color with respect to others. For example, people don't tend to go for the ends or the middle as much as they do tend to go for one off. And it's because of what's actually taking place. It's because I'm trying to trick you, and I'm trying to trick you, and on some level you want to participate, and on some level you want to counteract that, so you don't necessarily go for the obvious. So there are subtle little psychological things like that that may betray a trend that would then be relevant to that. My thing is, I agree with Jeff, there may in fact be irrational things like that I occasionally depend on, but the second I realize that I'm doing it, I attempt to correct myself. And I think that's one of the things that we use to identify good skeptics.
Yeah. I mean, we're evolved to be pattern recognition machines, and the downside is there's a lot of things that seem like patterns that aren't necessarily all that significant, but our brains react to them anyway. You know, so you have to educate yourself in how to tell the difference between things that are patterns that are likely to actually be relevant and patterns that aren't, and then you know.
Well, now that he says that, because I watch patterns all the time, and as far as this universe goes, we always realize that the person who ends up winning is either called in the second position in the final 5 or in the top 15. They're out in the first 5 or the last 5. The girls in the middle never end up winning. It just never happens that way.
Okay.
Well, obviously I don't have the data in front of me. I'm sure if somebody dug through the data and made this public, that all of a sudden the Miss Universe pageant might notice this and change the way they're doing
But
things.
unless you know of a mechanism that causes it to be that way, you know, something about the way the rules are structured, or the way the process is carried on, that results in that outcome, it could be just coincidence that so far that is how it has happened.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yep.
So.
Well, that was my question.
All right, thanks,
Cool.
John.
Thank you guys for listening.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Thanks very much.
Have a good day. Bye.
You too.
All right, we've got Bet right here in Austin. Hello?
Hey, guys.
Hey.
Oh, it's Brett. They typoed it. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's Brett.
Hi, Brett.
How you doing?
What's up?
Turn that down. Okay.
Yeah, you want to turn the TV down because there's a delay.
Okay. The Denise that called earlier, I think there was a really good opportunity. What she said, what you guys were talking about, creation of hell and God being responsible for everyone's sins there. That's a great opportunity for a flow chart. I'd like to see that all in large, bold print that you could follow it down, and I think it'd be really persuasive. But when you were talking to her, you also said that these beliefs are immoral and lots of other things. And you know, the argument is, well, if I believe this way all my life and all I did is good things from it, and what's the harm if I was wrong in the end? Can you expand on that?
Sure. You want to go?
Sure. You know, if you have an immoral belief, but just I mean, if you think it's okay to punch Spanish people in the face, and you never meet one, you can get through life without ever having done anything bad. And but then if you say, well, what was the harm? You're missing the point, right? I mean, that was a bad thing to believe in the first place. And I think that's the kind of thing that Matt was talking about. And now back to you, because I don't actually know for sure what you were talking about.
Well,
what specific immoral things about the whole hell thing were you referencing?
One of the issues with this, it depends on specifically what it is that people believe, but by and large, when I hear the what's the harm thing, any number of answers come up, depending on the specific beliefs. There are, of course, believers who obviously do things that they shouldn't, like avoiding hospitals and blood transfusions and opting for prayer instead of actual medical treatment. And then there are other believers who simply, go through life and they have these beliefs, but they don't necessarily act on them to the same extent. So their idea is that, well, if I get to the end, it's not, my belief in God doesn't affect my daily life or do anything else like that. So if I get to the end and die and I turn out to have been wrong, I've lost nothing. It's a take on Pascal's wager that is horribly, horribly flawed, because what you've lost is the opportunity for truth.
Yeah. May I? We've sort of gotten off specifically the subject of hell now, but on the whole idea that the person who believes that whether their morality is rational or not, as long as they only did good things, what was the harm? Well, if their morality was irrational, likely they did do bad things. They just weren't able to recognize it. If your understanding of morality is how you make those decisions, and if your idea of morality is, well, what you're supposed to do is obey this set of rules that you got from your religion, without having any understanding or concern for the actual implications of, or actual consequences of following those rules, then you can get through life and think that you were a great guy and not have been.
Yeah.
I think there's, the way I'd kind of phrase it is this, our brains are complex and we don't completely understand. And while some people are really good at compartmentalizing specific beliefs and keeping them separate from other things, particularly when you start talking about theists who are also scientists, who would apply the scientific method and try to be rational about things, even in the theist/skeptic community there. The fact of the matter is that our brains take into consideration everything. And every belief we have, either directly or indirectly, affects every other belief we have to some degree. And that may be negligible in some cases, but why, first of all, why risk it? And second of all, I don't think that what's the harm is a particularly good argument for holding an irrational belief. So I am of the opinion that I'd like to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible, because I understand that every false belief that I have, even if I'm not immediately aware of all the potential harm, it's something that can affect all my other beliefs. And in the case of religious people, many of them are not just holding these beliefs, they're actively promoting these beliefs in others. And if you have a belief that you don't have a particularly good reason for, and your best reason for not giving it up is that you don't presently see the harm in it, and yet you go and promote that belief to others, I think you're taking an immoral action. I think you are promoting something as true that you don't necessarily have any good reason to believe is true, and you haven't yet identified the harm, but you're willing to pass this meme along, even though you know that it could potentially be harmful. When we talk about the idea that we are all reprobate sinners who send ourselves to hell, and we can avoid this by latching on to some fictitious life preserver being tossed to us by some fantasy guy who supposedly died for a weekend, I think it's really kind of absurd to say that believing that has no effect on anything else in your life. I think it's a naive statement to presume that one could believe something so profound about the human nature at its base and the way the cosmos works, and that it doesn't affect any other decisions. I think more accurately, people have blinders on to the harm. And there's a website, I think it's whatstheharm.net, that will actually go through and quantify some of the harm that's being done. And we've seen this in other areas too, where people have been convinced that they're not only not doing harm, but they're avoiding harm. In the anti-vax movement, for example,
right,
where they have been convinced that vaccinating their kids is going to be harmful, and so they take this action, and their argument is not, okay, what's the harm if I don't vaccinate my kids? Their argument is that they're doing the absolute right thing, which is similar to what religious believers would have you believe. And the fact of the matter is, they're absolutely wrong, and they are freaking killing people. And we're seeing epidemics of whooping cough and other things because they have failed to uphold their duty as, good citizens. Oh, well, it's my right. I don't have to vaccinate my kids if I don't want to, and I shouldn't have to take that risk. Well, thank you for screwing the rest of us over and killing off herd immunity, you selfish pricks. And by the way, you're probably killing your kids. You're probably doing harm. So they're not, there are plenty of people who can run around and say, what's the harm, where we haven't necessarily identified it. But there are also people doing it, not only what's the harm, but I'm not doing harm, when there's clear identifiable harm. So yeah, I think that the right position is to try and avoid false beliefs as much as possible.
Right. What's the harm is really not the issue. Yeah. Right? Is it true is the issue. Because if you have a belief and the belief is accurate, right, then there may be consequences of you having that belief. That belief may affect your behavior, but at least that you're taking the actions that are driven by an accurate understanding of reality. If you're believing something that's not true, it's still going to drive your actions, but now it's just an irresponsible thing to latch onto in the first place. I have exactly one thing you could call a belief that I know can't be proved even in theory, and in addition to a number of things that I think the evidence supports them, I believe those things, right, on which I can be wrong. But I know of exactly one belief I have that I'm just latching onto for convenience sake, and that is that all of this is not just a big illusion. And I'm completely upfront about the fact I can't prove that to myself or anybody else, and